Good evening everyone, I'm Trixie Dominguez from Beside English 3B and my topic is all about literary movements, New York School. My objective is by the end of these lessons, you will be able to understand what is literary movements in New York School, to know what are some poetry in New York School, and to learn more about the painters of New York School. My introduction is the New York School refers to a group of experimental painters and a coterie of associated poets. The painter Robert Motherwell coined the name playing up the pre-World War II École de Paris, a group of painters that included Pablo Picasso and Henri Matisse. Abstract expressionist arts has a major influence in the New York School. The name New York School is the result of an aesthetic sensibility and writing style more than simple allocation. The New York School was not an academic institution, but rather a community built on proximity and similarities in styles, methods, and subject matter. And when discussing literary poets, literary scholars, and even fans allude to a New York School. These literary movements began on 1950s and 1960s in New York City, and resulting into two generations of poets renowned for their poetic use of ironic incorporations of urban life, pop culture, and unexpected linguistic play. The poets in this literary period appropriate to various aspects of French surrealism and French symbolism. They also employed typically surrealistic juxtapositions, which tended to be combined with whimsical observations of daily human behavior and speech. Their poetry is steeped on facts, events, and objects of everyday life, and it's characterized by an impulse to blur the boundary between arts and life. First generations of New York School was centered around the core of 5 poets. They collaborated and socialized to expressionist painters including Jackson Pollock and William de Kooning, and their poetry was experimental, philosophical, anti-establishment, and anti-academic. Their group began in the 1950s, and it is closely associated with the similarly named movement in painting, alternatively called abstract expressionism or actions painting. So we have Frank O'Hara. He is the leader of a New York School poets. He used insights from music, art, and dance in poetry. He also known as the poets among the painters. Next is James Coyler. He was a central figure in the New York School. He also considered as the most lyrical and musical of the group, which is known for his conversational style and charm. Next is Barbara Guest, an American poet and a prose stylist. She wrote more than 15 books of poetry. Next is John Ashbery. John Ashbery is recognized as one of the greatest 20th century American poets. He is considered as the most influential American poet of his time. He is a self-reflective and uses high allusions. Next is Kenneth Koch, an American poet, playwright, and a professor, active from 1950s until his death at the age of 77. He was the prominent poet of the New York School poetry, and his poetry replete with wit and humor. So it is the examples of abstract expressionism. We have the second generations. Second generations is the members founded of non-academic learning centers that serve local communities such as the Poetry Project of St. Mark Church. These poetry were also influenced by art, and their work contained of the zany humor and collaborative spirit, and their poetry organized started in the mid of 1960s. So the first generation is 1950s, while the second generation is started on the 1960s. So we have Alice Nutley in the second generation. She referred as a present-day Homer. She has a distinct way of bending genre, experimenting with poetry's narrative qualities, considered as pioneering voice on the topics like motherhood and domestic life. We have Ted Berrigan. Is a self-conscious, and the tone is sophisticated and urbane. He was the author of more than 20 books, including the sonnets on the year 1964. He also a prominent figure in the second generation of poets. Bill Brixton, a poet, teacher, and sometimes a curator. He is also became on the active in the art and literary worlds in the early 20s. He was also a recipient of awards and fellowships from the National Endowment for the Arts. Next is Ron Padgett, an American poet, essayist, fiction writer, and translators. Next is Joe Brainerd. So Joe Brainerd is American artist and writer associated with the New York School. His prestigious and innovative body of work included assemblage, collages, drawing, paintings, book designs, and others. So I have my examples in poetry in New York School. This is from Frank O'Hara entitled Why I Am Not a Fainter. I am not a fainter. I am a poet. Why? I think I would rather be a fainter, but I am not well. For instance, my Coulterbridge is starting a fainting. I drop in, sit down, and have a drink. He says I drink, we drink. I look up. You have sardines in it. Yes, it needed something there. Oh, I go and days go by. I drop in again. The painting is going on and I go. The days go by. I drop in. The painting is finished. Where is sardines? All that's left just letters. It was too much, Mike says. But me, one day I'm thinking of color orange. I write a line about orange. Pretty soon it is a whole page of words, not lines. Then another page. There should be so much more, not orange, of words of how terrible orange is like. Days go by. It is even in prose. I am real poet. My poem is finished and I haven't mentioned orange yet. It's 12 poems. I call it orange, and one day it is gallery. I see Mike's painting called Sardine. So, what is the point of this poem? So, the point of this poem is paintings are made of paintings, and poems are made of words. And whatever it is the artist or the poets choose to represent is less relevant than the compositions of colors of words that comes out of it. The points of arts, whether painting or poetry, is some kind of feeling that goes into it, that goes translated into medium of art. Painting, the case of painting. Words is the case of poet. What's not important is that you, as a reader, know what is the inspiration was. Now, he is not a painter because poetry can do as a painter could. So my conclusion is the impact of the New York School has been wide and varied. This group has been considered the precursors to various postmodern movements in poetry, especially language poetry. In particular, the notion that anything in the life is material for a poem, ranging from pop culture, images, and events to daily thoughts and routines emerge with the poetry of New York School. So this is my reference, and that would be all. Thank you.